Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And we have an agent investor show today where you're going to be able to hear about both things and how to succeed at both. My guest is Mike Cossette. He's down in Austin, Texas. It's a market that everybody's heard of. You might want to get more info. We definitely talk about it, but we also talk about how he started as an investor and then turned into an agent, but how he keeps going at both. Let's get to it. This is episode 237 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Mike Cossette. Mike is a real estate broker, investor, co-owner of a rem.ax franchise with over 20 years of experience in residential and commercial real estate. He specializes in, this is very similar to me, Mike, luxury homes, multifamily, short-term rentals, small commercial properties, and helping investors scale their portfolios. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for everything you do in the community.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you. I love having other agents who also have a very strong investing game as well, because I like to kind of go back and forth. So I'm going to start you with a question that I've asked several of my other agent guests. If you're an investor out there listening to this, should you get your real estate license?
Absolutely, 100%.
See, I agree. Tell me why, though, you think, because I'd like to bounce that off for the listeners.
Well, I mean, I think there's a variety of reasons. I think, you have the main one is saving on the commission sides. 2, you're understanding the contract nuances. 3, the community and the network of people that you build up, and then their networks. Yeah. So the double expanded networks, the seven people from Kevin Bacon, you never know when it could happen to those guys.
Yeah, and I've always said it's just an access thing. If you want to get access, why do you want to wait on an agent who doesn't really want to work with you, which is most of the agents are terrible. We both know that. So you're waiting on some rando that you found on Zillow. If you just have your license, you can go see every dump the first day that it hits the market.
The first hour.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're just trolling the hot sheets like we do. And then, oh, look, that looks good. I'll just go see it. You set the appointment, go see it. I think it's a no-brainer. And then for people who are flipping, the only true way to get the ARV is to actually look at the real comps, since all of the sold comps in each state don't actually syndicate. So you can't get a true value on that.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we agree. We'll just shut down the show now. Well, so how did you get your start? Were you agent first or investor first?
Well, I guess technically I was an investor first. I was in college and my folks lived in Colorado and we needed a home base in Texas. And that's where I went to school. And so I convinced my folks to help me to invest in a property. And I let them know, hey, I'm going to, get it rented out. I'll take care of the mortgage, all the expenses, everything like that. And then on the other side of the coin, I had joined a fraternity. We didn't have a fraternity house. So, it was kind of a mutually beneficial thing. I had multitude of renters already lined up. And so that's kind of how we got into it. And that's how, got into investing. I did my first complete remodel and rehab after we destroyed the house. Yeah. There were holes in the roof. It was a complete dog mess.
At least it was your dog mess, though.
Well, yeah. I could, 1/19, I would say.
Yeah. But that's interesting. What made you think that you could do it? And what made you think to ask your parents, about, of course, this kind of in-house house hacking or fraternity hacking before that was even really a thing?
Well, yeah. Before it was house hacking, it was just called rent your rooms out.
Exactly. Being smart, earning money. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And it was actually just kind of an opportunity that, came together in my head when my folks came down for, I think it was like Thanksgiving. And I lived in like a little dorm apartment type thing. And then our fraternity also we're looking for a fraternity house, and not having a home base for my folks, and my brother was in school in the state of Texas as well.
Yeah.
And then the fraternity guys saying, "Hey, we need a house. We need a house. We have people to rent." It just kind of all of a sudden lined up and kind of made it happen. Putting the pieces together, being a hustling college kid with not much money, always trying to figure out the slight edge.
Yeah, it's funny though. I mean, I've talked to so many investors and a lot of them got their start exactly the same way. Again, before there was any acronyms or crazy words, it was just like a smart move and you get to live with your friends. How is the collecting the rent? Because that's always tough with your friends, especially when you're young. They're like, beer money or rent, gonna go beer,
I didn't ever really have that big of a problem collecting rent. One, I think because it was such a sought after property that people wanted to be there, that if they didn't want to pay rent, there was a line of people, ready to come in behind them. And for what the value they got, it was on 17 acres. We had a pool. We could shoot guns out there.
It's the best.
I mean, it was underpriced for what it was to live there, I think. But at the same time, I rented out the attic, turned the attic into a bedroom. So, it was very, very resourceful, and we got the money that more than what we needed, but still, what you got, I feel like it was a little underpriced.
Yeah, I feel like, did your parents know at the time that they were unwittingly like making you the king of the fraternity? Like, hey, this guy's going to get us a house. Let's go. I mean, that's like, you can't really do much better in college than that.
Yeah, they had a slight inclination when they came down the first time. And then a couple times when the sheriff's department would call them in Colorado, they really started to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So let's just say I had to pay for my own attorneys throughout that time.
Yeah, well, so you get started with that investment, and then did you make another investment before you got your license? When did getting your license come into play?
Getting my license came into play. So right before I graduated, I had to remodel the house. So went to the bank and said, "Hey, is there any way I can get some money to do a remodel?" And they were like, "Yes. How much money can we give you?" And that really just was like, "What? No, you don't understand. We kind of destroyed the house." They're like, "Oh, we don't care.
Yeah.
You have plenty of money access to. How much do you want?" And then all the light bulbs went off like, we bought this house. I did nothing but destroy it. Other people paid all the rent, and the bank wants to give me more money. And this was during 2002 to 2006. So obviously the market was climbing and equity was building. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. So immediately I was like, this is, I wasn't a very good employee and always been kind of entrepreneurial. I was like, this is the game I need to be playing.
Yeah.
For good. And that's when we decided, my folks moved down from Colorado, and we decided, hey, let's get a real estate franchise in Central Texas.
Wow. Yeah. So you were really in between going to more investments, but you knew, again, you're going to have access to types of investments by getting your license. I think people forget about that. Like if you, like we were saying before, you have access to view literally everything that hits the market all the time. Whereas instead of that, you just have to kind of like, go on your Zillow bings that come every day, which again are just kind of a hot mess and don't have all the right information.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. So where did you go from there? You get your license, you finished that. And did you sell that property, or did you keep it for a while after you stopped living there?
We sold it. As a 23-year-old coming out of college, making that kind of money, I think we netted at the end of the day, after everyone was paid back, about 130 grand. And at 23, that was mind blowing. So,
well, I mean, for your parents too, they must have been like, I mean, this worked out. Like, good job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were like, you just paid your salary for the next 2 years in the company we're going to start and helped buy the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, again, you probably got in with not a ton of money down, even if your parents helped, because it wasn't that expensive to get in on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we bought it for like $230 and sold it for $560 over 4 years. I think we put 80 into it. And it was that basically springboarded the next jump into the recession, which we didn't see coming.
Yeah. Well, I want to get your take on this, because this is something as an agent that I always tell everybody, like, to me, every house is an investment, but people have always discounted their actual primary residence. But a lot of my best deals in my whole life have been houses I've lived in, because I knew how to buy, I knew how to wait, and I knew how to renovate. Have you found that it's hard to kind of get that across to your just regular home buyer that they're making an investment? Because I try to tell them, but they're more emotional than investors.
I think, yes, I think there's two schools of thought. And, on the investing side, some of the big names out there that are big investors, all preach that if you're going to buy real estate, it needs to be making you money. If you're buying your primary residence, then it needs to be paid off or you need to be renting. And that's one school of thought. Now, the other one is obviously the way we kind of think is, no, you can house hack, you can borrow at a better rate and put less down and then turn that into a rental as you move forward. So I think there's a little bit of misinformation or clash between the two schools of thoughts and trying to get across to the emotional home buyer who hasn't really, who might be in the stock market game or the cryptocurrency game and doesn't really look at real estate through the glasses that we look through it. It's a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow than somebody who, grows up and listening to the bigger pockets or has somebody in real estate that puts those pieces together and looks at it. Hey, this is my first investment and I'm going to maximize it by living there and either house hacking or just taking advantage of rates and terms.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are just over preached in terms of like making money on it, because I feel bad for like a couple who gets their first house and then somebody, usually the husband says, hey, let's rent out a room in our house. And, something, why? Like we're like earning appreciation every day. In 3 years, it's going to be up $100,000. We don't really need, Randy from down the street living in our thing and sharing our kitchen. If in college, it's a great idea. But like as you go, I think people are forgetting that you can just steadily earn appreciation. Of course, you're not getting cash flow, but maybe it's a patience thing, right?
Yeah, I think that it's a big patience thing. And I also think it's all in the individual. I'll tell you what, like I house hacked all the way up until I had 4 kids from the time I was in college for 20 something years. It was some form of house hacking.
But obviously your wife was okay with it. Like you guys talked about it together and said like, hey, this is our strategy. Let's just get some extra money, or let's buy houses where this is an opportunity, mother-daughter, separate entrance, things like that.
Yeah, it was actually her idea. And the sell on it that she sold me on it, to be honest.
That's awesome.
Was that this back when Airbnb started in 2013, I think was when we first started doing Airbnb. We had a little bungalow downtown Central Austin. I was just divorced and we just started dating, and she had lived there with my roommate. And then he moved out and we would try. I said, hey, we got to travel the world. That's something we both wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then when we left, she's like, hey, let's just rent it on Airbnb, see what happens. Well, then that started paying for our entire vacations. And then this was
I come home,
yeah, it was another aha. I was like, wow, we just put it up every single weekend. Even if we didn't have a big vacation plan, we go stay in a little Airbnb, one of the silver trailers.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and go stay for $100 a night and make $3,000 for the weekend on renting our house out. And then, obviously that money went towards our entertainment and our quality of life, not so much towards, saving and reinvesting at that point.
Yeah.
But that was the big sell and in the high growth of Airbnb as well during that time.
Yeah, it seems like you've had your finger on the pulse, though, because it seems like you're doing these things at the right times, and then you're able to then scale from there. But a lot of people now are not sure, is the right time. How come you and I both think at all times are the right time? Because I remember this from what you wrote before. Like people are missing out by not paying attention to the market because they think there's no way to buy when rates are high.
I think, the old adage, not timing the market, it's time in the market. So no matter what angle you look at, 2-3 years ago when interest rates were very low, prices were $50,000 above list and they were skyrocketing, right? And, so that was, why would I buy now? There's no options. I can't get what I want. But there's low rates. Now it's the flip side, right? There's lots of inventory. Rates are much higher. Now the advantage is the high negotiation. Now, if you're in the commercial space, you can get access to asset classes that only the big boys had access to before. You can have massive negotiations for desperate people that are in struggling situations with the way the markets are. And so you have that leverage and power on the pricing side, knowing that rates eventually, if you believe the government's going to keep spending and printing money, then eventually rates are going to keep coming down, because that's how they keep stimulating the economy. So I think that's, it's looking at the glass half full, and instead of, hey, let me fit my strategy to the market, let's build my strategy around the opportunity the market's presenting, is a way to look at it.
Yeah. And to do that as an investor, you have to always be paying attention. You can't just, I'll take 6 months off and then hop back in. You've missed all the trends. You can't just find the trends on Facebook because everything's fake. You're not really, those aren't the real headlines of what's happening with real estate entrepreneurs.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what? It's okay to skip some of the trends. If you're in a spot where it's like, hey, I just need to stabilize my portfolio, which a lot of people are in right now.
Yeah.
In a phase, then if you want to skip a trend, that's okay. But just know that as soon as you think you're ready, you're ready. And the sooner you pull the trigger, the better off you are.
Well, that's a great point, though, because part of being an active real estate investor, it doesn't mean you have to be buying, but stabilizing your existing assets is something that I think people forget about. They say, I have 10 units, and they're doing great. And I'm like, if you have 10 units, they're not all doing great. So which one sucks? Which one should you get rid of or repurpose, or how can you stabilize it? Or they buy things that have high CapEx because they look like good cash flow. And then a year later, they're like, oops, I didn't realize that a C- cost, a new boiler this quickly, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. If it seems too good to be true, then there's usually a higher risk on the side on something that you don't really understand yet. So that's the lesson a lot of people learn the hard way. I've learned lots of times. And I think the stabilization of the assets is something that a lot of investors that moved really fast through 2020 through 2023 are really being, getting caught with their pants down, especially if you're, have properties in Florida or California and you're dealing with, natural disasters, and you got rents declined over the last year and interest rates went up. So the amount of sales got cut by 30%, so all of those factors together, if you're moving too fast and you're over leveraged, right now you may not be in a hot spot. And I think a lot of people are stepping back, looking at their portfolios like, whoa, we got to fix this before we move forward.
Yeah. So over your career now, what's your favorite asset class right now? If you had to take X amount of money and just invest into an asset class, what would you invest in?
Right now, I like the small multifamily.
Like under 4 residential or 4 and under residential?
No. Commercial, small commercial. So 5 to 30.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Under 30 is not everybody can manage that, but it's manageable under 30. Yeah.
Under 30 is manageable. Under 20 is great.
Yeah.
Under 30, you got to have help.
Yeah.
And that can come in a lot of ways. You don't have to hire a management company. We've got one that's a 12 unit that we've got. One of our tenants is kind of they love the day-to-day of dealing with the other tenants. Yeah. They love communicating. They love watering the ground, and they get a discount in rent.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
We're not paying a management company 12%. We're paying maybe 2 or 3% to some people that are there that love doing it. And so there's lots of ways to do that. But I think after 30 or 25 to 30 units, at least for us, that's kind of the breaking point to where you have to bring on a team.
Yeah.
And then you get to that gray area of now we might need 30 more to make it economical.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really like the 8 to 12 unit. I feel like because the big players don't want it because it's just not big enough, but it's an absolute rock solid asset that you can usually get for cheap because it's just too many units for your regular baby investor, and it's too few for the big ones. So there's 8 to 12 range, and like you said, they produce. You can always use somebody there, even if you have someone who acts as a super, who's a handyman. There's ways of doing 8 to 12 units that I think are unbelievable right now.
Yeah, I 100%. That's the sweet spot that I like right now, especially in the market that we're in. Mm-hmm. I think the next 3 to 5 years, we overbuilt our multifamily and it's all being delivered right now in 2023. And there's nothing on the horizon for the next 3 to 5 years as far as multifamily stuff because, now the interest rates and development is so difficult.
Yeah.
And then we combine the capital side with the fact that, interest rates have gotten so high that even though rents went down a little bit last year, another year cycle has come through and all the buying demand is still on the sidelines. And guess what? They're staying in rentals or being pushed into rentals, coming out of college into rentals, when normally they would have that natural transition phase into buying by now. They're staying in the rentals. So that rent is starting to come back up. The demand for those assets is starting to come back up. Yet in this window of time, the opportunity to get some of the mom and pop deals is phenomenal. And you add in the fact that you can parlay that with seller financing because they don't want to take big chunks of cash and pay taxes on it. A lot of them are retiring. So they want to take the little bit of payments, a 2 or 3, even 5-year balloon note where they can get income and all of those. And you're paying 4% or 5% or even less sometimes. All of those factors for this window of time, I believe that's the opportunity that we're looking at and we're trying to take advantage of.
Yeah. I mean, another great point, because the 8 to 12 owner is mom and pop. Like it always is. I mean, like 60% of those owners are people who just don't want to pay the capital gains, because there's no reason to. Their heirs maybe want it, but they're not so old that they're like close to dying, barring something crazy. So it's just a great manageable unit flow, and tenancies are usually good because you're not overburdened by having too many tenants. And then you have the potential for seller finance on a lot of those 8 to 12 units.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Mike Cossette as we talk agent, investor, and all things in between. If you want to find Mike online right now because his energy is high and you just think, hey, that's my guy for Austin, all you have to do is go anywhere on social and look up Ask Mike Coss, C-O-S-S. You'll find him. Let's get back to Mike. So you're in Austin?
Yes, I'm in Austin.
Yeah, so Austin and Texas as a whole have gotten all these weird, troubling headlines, but you just, brought to light what I've been saying. So they overbuilt, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to rent. Rents are definitely going to go up this year because they went down last year. And as you said, for someone who is looking to buy in that area, they're just smarter to rent now because what they can get for their rent is so much better than what they can get for their mortgage payment. It's a no-brainer where you are, right? It's not even close.
I mean, it's getting close. It's getting close. Is
it because there's more inventory sitting on the market from things that people couldn't sell, or?
Yeah, well, from the peak, our prices have dropped overall about 20%, and the amount of people renting that demand pool isn't thinning out the way it should be. It's building up, and so we're seeing, yes, our apartment complexes rents took a little bit of a hit last year, but now as these renewals are coming up, we're looking at the competing apartment complexes and we're seeing they're all booked. All booked. They don't have a lot of options. We do have the capability to start raising our rents. And if you're not in an A-class asset, then you're sitting pretty good because you've got a little bit lower price point and all those people that aren't wanting to pay the developers rents on these super A-class assets, then they're falling into the the B's and the C pluses. So I think that supply and demand curve is shifting. Yeah, for an apartment, it is definitely way more affordable than buying. But to rent a nice house, it's going to be getting pretty close over this next year.
Yeah, so I mean, that is interesting because there's a way for them to figure out what they can do, and what you said makes a lot of sense. It's the building buildup was all for A class because not a lot of people just build C class anymore. So when you have the B, you're like, oh, great, maybe ours isn't perfect, but the price point is great, so we can go up a little price point because the developers are all fighting with each other over coming down, $4 on a unit because they're all just trying to, get it filled up.
Absolutely. Yeah. All those little pieces of the developers and the BlackRocks and all those guys that are fighting over that top dollar spot is just fueling the B's and the C's and then moving those asset classes almost up a unit in terms of, demand and affordability and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it does just make sense because there was such an influx of people to Austin over the last 10 years that they were going to have to live somewhere. It's not like people are leaving Texas. They're still coming to Texas. The tax bracket works for them, not the real estate taxes, but the economic income taxes work. So it's like, hey, this works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the wonderful musicians and waiters and staff members that make Austin Austin,
Yeah.
they're gonna have a place to live, and they're not buying $1 million homes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So, am I right? Did you buy like an island in Florida? I got to hear this story. I've had on a guest before who bought a town in Texas, John Jasniak, and I was just like really interested. So, tell me about this story because I know it's going to be interesting no matter what the result is.
Yeah, no, I love the island. Yeah, so we bought an island. I was during COVID. We bought it in April of 2020. So COVID had just happened.
You immediately got FOMO and were like, I can't sit here and do nothing. I got to get something. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I didn't even really want or have any. It wasn't even in the realm of my stratosphere buying an island. But I had one of my good buddies from Florida who was selling some stuff and came to Texas to sell it. He stayed in my Airbnb, which was next door. And we hung out and I was explaining to him, Hip Camp was like an Airbnb peer-to-peer type deal where you could rent out campsites.
Yeah.
And because he was like, how can I, do Airbnb, but I don't really have any money. I said, well, listen, you can buy a piece of land, you can rent it out, and then you can take that income to the bank as a proof of concept, borrow against the income, develop a little cabin, then rinse, wash, and repeat until you start developing it. And then now you are, literally developing your own piece of land with other people's money, and other people are paying it back. And all the light bulbs in his head went off. The next morning, he stayed up all night with a cup of coffee, came over and was like, hey, I want to buy an island.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the worst thing that can happen? I don't know. A hurricane blows it away?
Yeah. I mean, it is Florida, so you never know.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know. So
we'll probably just resurface from the ocean anyway,
Right. I had no idea. So I was like, well, okay. And so he wanted me to help him do that. So I said, okay, you know what? It's COVID. No one's doing anything. What am I going to call my clients again?
Yeah.
So I was like, let's figure it out. So he flew back down to Florida, took his boat out to the island, was walking the island, his kids in the background with machetes. It was crazy. And so I'm like, okay, so you want to buy the island? Let's do that. So it was a half price island because it was COVID and it was a distressed island.
Yeah. Who would have thought of that? Oh, no, there's a couple distressed islands out there that are just, uninhabited.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and so I wasn't going to buy it. And my buddy was buying it. And I went to my wife and said, he's kind of a little bit of a loose cannon sometimes. I hadn't talked to him in like 10 years and showed him my house. So I went to my wife and I said, you know what? I know, and banks won't finance islands by themselves. So, there's a little risk there. So this guy's, I don't think he has the cash to buy this thing. I was like, he's going to ask me to come in to help him buy it. I know it. So that day he called me and I knew it was coming. I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll help you. What else? It's COVID. What else am I going to do?
Yeah, right. Get a project on the books here.
Exactly. Had a little extra cash. Interest rates were low. So I was going to like, hey, you know what? I'll jump in there. And then I actually called another buddy I had in Florida. Because, the guy was kind of a loose cannon. I said, you know what? Hey, buddy number two, I knew he had just got a little bit of chunk of cash from a weird lawsuit deal. And I said, you want to come in on this island with us? Because I know, you guys don't know each other. So he's not going to do you like he would do me. I don't want to get a call from the, DEA saying there's a container full of people washed up on my island. And I can't even do anything about it because I'm in Texas. So at least worst case scenario, you can go down there and make sure that, whatever needs to be done can get done. And so we all three went in on it together and had a great development plan. And then the logistics of getting to the island were just, out of this world. And then finding out, man, tip number one about buying an island, really look into the environmental agencies that are involved because there's a lot of them. Every county, every state, and the United States, the federal, they all have EPAs, Florida environmental, county environmental, and they are very expensive and they all want a piece of the action. You have to get approval by all of them before you can do anything. So that was a new thing I'd never experienced before. So, we still have the island. I love the island. It's very cheap overhead. All we do is pay property taxes, which is split 3 ways.
Yeah.
And we have development plans that we are continuously evolving as Florida continues to get hit by hurricanes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes parking land is just a let's see what happens. You have to go into that thinking, well, if it goes underwater, it's okay. We're trying to figure out because I mean, that's how a lot of land flippers get started. They just buy land and realize, wait, I did nothing and I traded it and just doubled my money. Even though it's like $1,000, there's scale there to do that. But you have the potential of something if it does work out. If not, it's a great story.
Yeah. I mean, the story itself, I love it because, when I tell people I have an island, it's immediate like, oh, really? Tell me more about that. And then, because we bought it when we bought it, we believe based on the sales of the other islands in the area that we're about 8x what we paid for it.
Yeah.
As a blank island and with no overhead. So, we're going to turn that into something, and we can hold it for 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
But going down there with the kids in a little Amazon treasure box on the boat and spending the day out there and watching the kids do their thing is just, and putting up some tents and just doing whatever you want to do out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the biggest life fulfillment ROI.
Yeah. Let's go to our island. That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah. That's dad goals right there.
It's a whole experience for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So as you progressed, you started to move into larger asset classes. What did your investment portfolio start to turn into? I mean, what did you stick with? What did you get rid of in terms of what's a good use of your time as an investor?
Well, I think that is something that is ever evolving. I am a, investor of circumstance and market opportunity. And so I think that I don't think I'm going to pigeonhole myself, and I haven't been able to really.
Yeah.
When Airbnb was hot, we picked up some Airbnbs, and then, 2 of them have turned into long-term rentals, and then now they're turning back into Airbnbs.
Yeah.
We've got some long-term rentals that we parlayed into multifamily. Of course, I got a vacation rental in Florida that we bought to help facilitate access to the island. That one just got hit by 4 hurricanes in the year, and we're finishing up the last rehab on that one. So we may sell that one, may turn into an Airbnb. It's not going to be a long-term rental.
Yeah.
But the next thing in this window, if it lasts and we're able to, I think, like I said, the mom and pop 8 to 12, 16 unit apartment complex would be my target. But if rates fall and all the dynamics, different dynamics change, then, that could change. And also, I go by my gut on what I see, like that comes across my plate.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's just opportunities like the island. Like, I'm not going to say, well, I'm only investing in multifamily when my, buddy during COVID said, hey, I want to buy an island.
Yeah.
Like, that's just an opportunity you can't pass up. Regardless if it works out or not, sometimes you just go for it because something inside you says, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And geographically, like what's your buy box for like geography wise? Are you only buying in Texas and obviously Florida? Or are you like people now at this rate, they're going to send you some random deals from all over. Would you consider it? Or are you, kind of sticking to markets that
Both. No. So
yeah, well, you said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. So if someone comes with a good deal in Des Moines, you might be like, I mean, those numbers look pretty good.
Yeah. No, I don't. I look at the numbers, and the numbers tell their story, which is a huge part of it. But also, I would look at. So I like the Southeast, right? The Carolinas, I would jump all over. Tennessee, I would jump all over. All of Florida. I mean, there's parts of Biloxi that I've driven through that just look amazing. So I'm definitely intrigued and would look harder at anything in the Southeast. And because I've got 4 kids under the age of 6, I'm not trying to put them all on flights across the country.
Yeah,
so putting them in an RV and driving is that makes things easier to travel to for vacation rentals. And then, if Des Moines, Iowa popped up, I'd look at my resources in Des Moines and say, okay, actually, I have some folks in Des Moines that I sold their house here in Austin that are in real estate there. Boom, Des Moines would make sense. They could go buy, maybe they would want to invest.
Yeah.
And so having the boots on the ground there, the big pig, all the parts of the equation, they all play a factor. So there's not anything, and I would entertain deals from Mexico. I got friends in Brazil. There's nothing I wouldn't say absolutely no to. I'll tell you that. with some of the economics, I don't think I'd do anything in Russia or Ukraine at the moment. But.
Yeah, not now, but I mean, I think it's smart though, because I think everyone has like a certain buy box as an investor, but you don't want to close yourself off from other opportunities that might interest you. Because to me, boring is good. Investing can actually be pretty boring if you're good at it. But sometimes you need a little, you need a little island. Throw an island into the mix, see what happens.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't unsubscribe to the fact that for some people, zooming in and being super crystal clear on your buy box to where that is your day in and day out, bread and butter, and you're learning the most intricate nuances that you could only know by living in the life of the, whatever it is, 30 unit,
right,
mom and pop owned, seller financed in this tiny market, then there's something to that. Like you can reduce the risk by knowing all the information there is to know about that one specific asset class. And so there's, if people want to do that, that is 100% fantastic. And that may be really fun because you may make, your ROI or IRRs are going to be better than, the guy from New York who's investing there or anything like that. So I think there is something to that. For me, I gotta have a little bit of fun and pizzazz and be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. Also, I feel like people who set their buy box, 3 years ago when mortgage rates were low, if they're not adjusting their buy box, it's no wonder they're not finding deals. You bump into, nothing's penciling. Well, you're still using your Burr formula from 4.5 years ago. Of course, nothing's penciling. Like the rates are more than double. So what did you expect? That to me is silly by not adapting. It's fine if you don't want to invest, but don't start running everything through the calculator at 7 that you were running through at 3 that worked. It's just not going to work.
Right. Yeah, you have to look at the different market advantages and be okay with it. If you're looking for cash flow, in one area, and then the markets change, okay, then you have to decide what's more important, that area or the cash flow. Because if it's cash flow, you may have to look at a completely different market.
Yeah.
If it's that area, then you may need to look at a completely different strategy, like capitalizing on the appreciation or on the negotiation or on the repairs or on the value add versus, the straight up cash flow that you might have seen there, a couple of years ago. So you have to kind of really decide, hey, what is the most important thing that I want? And then build your strategy around, don't try to, match, put a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
When the round hole turns to a square hole.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people, investors are like, oh, agents don't help me. And I say, well, tell me what the presentation was. And some investors will come to us as agents and they're like, oh, I have, $500,000. I'll buy anything that has good cash flow. I'm like, that doesn't help me at all. You're putting all the pressure on me. Like, that's not interesting to me. I need to know, what you like, where you want to be, what your passion is, or else, nothing's going to close. That's like a classic non-closer. I have X amount of money. Okay, great. Send me the proof of funds. Oh, well, it's not really, cash. It's actually hard money. Great. Everybody can get hard money. It's like such an interesting speak as an investor versus being an agent who works with investor. There's a lot of nuance in there as an agent to figure out who's real and who's a good use of time. Do you agree with that?
1,000%. And I think a lot of that does go back onto the agent as far as being able to articulate, and educate, because a lot of investors, they listen to Bigger Pockets or they'll read a book and they think one thing, that they're just not getting the full picture behind it, right?
Yeah.
Or they're watching the Instagram, the 90-second story isn't going to tell you the
TikTok's not correct. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Yeah. There might be one sliver of truth to it, but it's not going to give you the whole story. Like, when you talk about all the moving parts from an investing standpoint, it's not only math. Cash flow, if you have $500,000 cash and you buy a $500,000 house with cash, you're getting cash flow because there's no debt, right?
Right.
So,
you just can't buy anything else. I mean, for a long time. Right?
Exactly. So when people say that, then that lends itself to me is, okay, then I need to explain to them cap rates and how to look at multipliers and, how to break everything down. And then that really triggers in and oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. I just wanted cash flow. Now it's all about returns and cost of capital, which is, layer 2 of the 7-layer dip.
Yeah. Yeah, now I'm getting hungry. So, hey, let's together give investors a better way to kind of market themselves to the best agents. So, those of us who work with investors, we don't work with everybody, obviously, because I want real investors. How do they show themselves off as a good investor? Because I think that's important. So, somebody comes to you, we've all heard the story a million times. Hey, I'm a first time investor, but I'm going to buy like 10 houses in the next 10 years. Great. Everybody says that. What do they need to show you as an agent? And I'll give some of my thoughts as well to make you take them seriously when they don't have a track record, no matter what they want to buy.
So what I love to see and what I try to get after is one, what is their core motivation?
Right.
Because when people tell me I'm looking for a deal or it has to do this or it has to do that, usually that means they're not that motivated.
Yeah, just find me a deal. That's again, just punch me in the face. I'm not interested. Yeah.
Right. But what I love is when people come and say, hey, I want to invest in real estate because of something that's deeply rooted, and then not have a defined, I want strategy that they're shooting for, because every market's different. Every market opportunity is different.
Yeah.
Everything changes. And so I want to understand the dynamics they're working with, and I want them to be open and inquisitive and, able to shift and learn and being moldable, because that's one of the things. Like the W-2 employee who's retiring is not going to be, regardless of the markets, is not going to be the same opportunities as, the single female who's divorced, who's getting alimony and has no, responsibilities at home. All those individual characteristics. That's what I want to understand. And that's where I want the investor to say, hey, if I'm a new investor, I'm open to the flexibility. I need to invest because of X, Y, Z. And here are my market factors. Let's build a plan together.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a partnership. I've dialed down the amount of clients I'll work with because I really want to be in true partnership. And the new NAR rules help us because now they have to sign the agreement. So you're kind of locked in. But I think those are really good points because sometimes people might think, no, I really want them to know exactly what they want, but they don't know anything yet. So what you're saying really makes sense. Like if they think they can house hack and also cash flow right now, it's silly. I love house hacking, but like you're not going to make money, especially if you're saying, hey, I want to house hack and I want to live in the 4-bedroom, 2-bath and rent the 1-1. Great. You're going to be like $3,000 loss each month, depending on where you are. So they have to understand the mechanics. And for us, it's really only a good use of our time if we can be that expert to help coach them, because then we know if we coach them right the first time, we're going to keep going. And that's really why agents love investors, because they can do more deals than your regular home buyer.
Right. Yeah. That's why theoretically they love investors because of that, which is true. However, the front end barrier is much like you mentioned. You might go through 100 investors that think they want to do something, and you find one that's truly motivated. And guess what? His first investment might only be a $300,000 single family home.
Yeah.
Right. And it might be 5 years before he's like, wow, let's do number 2 and 3. And then 4 more years. And then he's like, okay, now let's buy some big stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not, hey, we're going to find a bunch of investors and they're all going to buy 2 properties a year. And I'm going to just double up, my time and energy and effort by going through the investor route. No. You're going to spend a lot of upfront time figuring out how to deal with investors, siphoning through the investors. And then once you do find one, it's going to be a little bit of a patience game before they can, their slight edge can really roll down the mountain and build up a big snowball that can pay you.
Yeah, it's the momentum picture that you're talking about, push it all the way up to the top. And then they're like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. I'm going to stop sending mailers after 1 month. Oh, great job. Obviously that's not going to work. But yeah, that's why it's a partnership, because, investors, they all know a million agents. So you need to do a lot of work to prove that you're the one. And then once you are, you have to be good enough to say, you know what, you just did something behind my back. You're fired. Good luck to you. Because I think that's what shows your true mettle. And sometimes you get back and build the relationship back. But to me, it's a bad use of my time as an agent to work with any investor who's just never going to listen to me. Because then what are you hiring me for? Like you're hiring my 30 plus years of experience to just say, oh no, I know I can find a house hack that cash flows, even though I want to live in the big unit. It's just silly, bad use of time.
Exactly. And I do love that you pointed out the NAR thing, because that really gives us the leverage and the
Yeah.
opportunity to cut through the mess that before, was kind of a weird kind of
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah, I'm seeing one house with you today, then two with Bobby, and then three on Sunday, with Sharon. It's like, nah, yeah, it's not going to work anymore. And actually, we have to say that it doesn't work anymore. You only have the option. I think it's helped us a lot. I think it's confusing for investors because they're used to kind of like freewheeling it, so they want to sign a lot of one-off. But again, a one-off showing is of no use to me. I'm only trying to build relationships, and I think you know this from both sides. As an agent and as an investor, we always realize later now at this stage of our careers, it's always all been about the relationships. If you build relationships the right way, you don't need any pieces of papers or all of these things. You'll get those when the time comes. But if you just work hard for an investor client, or vice versa, the investor client puts a lot of trust in you, you're going to keep doing business together because you've built the relationship the right way.
That's the name of the game. That's the more hands you shake, the more money you make. You build those relationships and they will pay you forever. You got to, loyalty on both sides. And, you have to understand each other very well. And so I think that's 100% the truth right there.
Yeah. Let's do one more deep dive on this investor. So the investors come to you, the first thing you want to know is like, really, what's their why? Why are they getting into us? Do you want to see the money? I want to see the money, the pre-approval, or the cash, the proof of funds right away. Because I don't like doing a bunch of stuff, not knowing, someone can look at a bunch of properties and then they get pre-approved for 300,000 less. And that was all a waste of time. Because you could have been looking at better properties that fit what they wanted or understood what type of cash flow their expectations are there.
That's a great question. And I think it varies across agents and, the types of investors they deal with.
Yeah.
For me personally, I can usually tell by the conversations that we're having and the questions that I'm asking, the answers I'm getting, whether or not they are well funded or where they might have money, and just the words they use, and tells a lot about the background they come from and that sort of thing. So I can usually tell, yes, I need to see the money with him, or no,
when you said it, it's actually a great point, because I was thinking of myself and I'm like, yeah, I actually don't ask people if I already know, like I know they have money. I just know that it's real or I'm willing to take the risk. The only people that I ask like really quickly is I really don't think that they do. And that's exactly what you're saying. So that's a really good point, because I think, if you can talk the talk, walk the walk, and you talk about properties, you're either making up a really intricate lie. And you hear about the properties, you look them up on the tax record, verify them. You don't even have to bother. You're just like, yeah, they're good. They did own those 7 properties. And I think that's another, let's go back to where we started. MLS access. You can do this on regular tax sites, but I just go in, put in their name into the county, and I see how many properties they own. And they're like, wow, they really are not bullshit. They own 4 apartment buildings. And then you don't have that weird question, like we were saying, of the show me the money, because you just look them up and now you just, go do your job.
Yeah. And it's all about the types of questions you're asking them, because if they're making up an elaborate lie, there's no way they can fully understand the depth of the questions that I'm asking and the answers that they can give me that are going to prove that they have money. Right. Yeah. If they're telling me they have an apartment complex and I start asking about their tenant rents and their vacancy rates and, their capital stack, and they can't explain those dynamics to me that make sense, then I know they're full of BS.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Awesome. Mike, where's the best place for people to get in touch with you? Is it at your broker site, the RE/MAX one?
No, actually, across all platforms on the social talks, ticks, FaceSpace, and IGs, I'm at Ask Mike Coss, COSS. So if you Google that, you'll find me. Yeah. And then, just my RE/MAX website, you can go there. It's, the templated RE/MAX website. But to reach me, just go to at Ask Mike Coss anywhere. I'll have some links there. You can click, get direct contact in me, and I'm an open book. You can see everything. Bigger pockets too. You want to see some of my deals? investments, go there and check it out too.
Yeah, I don't know why people don't fill out their profile at BiggerPockets. I have like 50 deals on there. It's like, that's what the section's for. It's great. You can really see what people are doing. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you spending the time, and hopefully we can work some Texas to New Jersey referrals. I love sending out referrals, especially for investors, because I think that's another relationship business, and it's another great reason to have your license. If you don't want to be an active real estate agent, you can be sending your friends referrals to great agents like us all over the country, just because you know people, and then you get a cut of it.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. And I don't have anyone in Jersey currently, so you're my guy, Jonathan.
Yeah. Awesome, Mike. Well, I really appreciate it. Great getting to know you, and thanks for spending the time.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jonathan. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. That was Mike Cossette. Remember, you can find him Ask Mike Coss everywhere on social. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of who's coming up on the next episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. In episode 238, my guest is Wendell Butler. Now, his company is called Hammerhead Capital. It's a veteran-owned real estate investment company in the Carolinas, so we're talking acquisition. This is boots on the ground acquisition show. You're going to learn all about how he got started and how he keeps going as a local home buyer in the Carolinas. We'll see you next episode with Wendell.